Okay, so I'm facing the firing squad. Okay. Hi, the first name is Mike, and the last name is Rains, R-A-I-N-S.
Okay, so tell us your reaction to what happened.
Well, obviously I'm disappointed that bail wasn't granted. I understand the judge's reasoning. This judge has always made his reasoning very clear, and he said he thinks that we have a substantial issue, or issues that we've raised. He just did not feel, sitting at the bench, that the substantial issues would necessarily result in a reversal of the conviction. So based on that, he's denied the bail.
Agree or disagree with that?
Oh, I disagree with that ruling, obviously. I think that this is an issue of first impression. What the judge did in his instructions is he gave this jury a path to convict Mr. Mehserle for conduct that is never declared by any court in the state to be criminal. And so by doing that, he has set this case up for an issue of first impression in the Court of Appeal, and that is, do police officers or can police officers be convicted of manslaughter because they knew or should have known that another officer acted inappropriately before they arrived? That's really what the issue is, the main issue on appeal. And this judge gave the jury the ability to convict Johannes Mehserle essentially for the conduct of Tony Peroni that occurred before Mehserle even arrived.
Did Johannes Mehserle walk in that courtroom expecting that he could go home today?
I think he was of the mind, as I told him, that we had good grounds to get bail set, that the only issue that I saw being appealed was the issue of whether or not there were substantial legal issues. And I told him to be optimistic, and he said to me, he said, Mike, there is a light at the end of this tunnel. Whether or not the judge grants this motion, and the light at the end of the tunnel is that I will be out and I will see my son by next year, and I'm looking forward to it.
So now for you, Mike.
What was you had a meeting in chambers, and you've talked about security obviously all along. What was the security issue with regard to your client? Will he stay at the LA County Jail, do you think?
Well, I'm not going to talk about the proceedings that were held in chambers because those proceedings were under seal. Where he will be staying at this point in time, I can't speak to. That will be determined at some later date. I'm not sure. I can tell you he'll be at LA County Jail tonight because they're returning him there right now as we speak.
Are you opposed to him being transferred to state prison for the last 6 months?
Let me put it like this. I think it doesn't make good sense to transfer him to state prison for a 6-month commitment, and particularly with state prison having their own issues of overcrowding and such, but that's not my determination.
He does get more credit in county jail than he would in prison as far as...
I don't think he gets more credit in county jail. I think the credit would remain the same whether he was serving a commitment, the remainder of a state prison commitment in county or state prison.
How big of a concern is still his safety?
This concern I have for his safety has been paramount from the get-go, and it remains high today. I might say, in representing police officers in high-visibility cases in almost 3 decades, I have never, ever seen the level of anger, the amount of threats, serious threats, credible threats against a police officer or his family as we've seen in this case. And so, given that level of fear that I have about his safety, I would be concerned about him serving out a sentence in CDC, where I think it's less predictable that they could keep him safe.
So what
Would
now,
you
Mike?
rather have him stay in the jail, or have you asked for that?
Well, of course, I'd rather have him stay at his house, which was the basis of my motion, but the judge has denied us that opportunity. The only thing I will say about LA County Jail, and Johannes told me, the food is crummy and it's dusty. That was his comment about the LA County Jail. But I will say this, that the LA County Jail is a known commodity, and the deputies of Los Angeles County have proven themselves time and time again to be utmost professionals and eminently capable of caring for the safety, and that's the main concern.
So Mike,
Decide where he goes. Would that be up to the judge?
I think the judge has some say-so in that, but I think ultimately there will be discussions between the judge, LA County, and probably CDC.
So
Did
Mike,
you have
what
a chance
now?
to talk to him after the proceedings,
I
and
did.
what was his reaction?
I did. He was resigned to the fact that he's going to serve out the rest of his sentence in custody somewhere. He was hoping that, wherever it is, it's someplace where he'll be able to see his fiancée and see his son. And beyond that, he was grateful for the arguments today. He has been grateful and remains grateful that we came to Los Angeles for this case, that we came to Judge Perry's court for this case, and that he feels he got a fair trial.
So like, what now? What do you do now?
What do we do now is he continues to serve out his sentence. We pursue the appeal that we have filed. Regrettably, of course, that appeal can never be completed before he finishes his sentence. So he will be released sometime next year, and we will continue to appeal the conviction.
So there's some question, if this prison time is done and that sentence is finished, why go forward with appeal? Why not just close the book and be done with it?
There's a pragmatic side to this case that says, why not just let it go at this point? I can tell you I've had discussions with Johannes about this, and I'll tell you his feelings are that if we don't go forward with this appeal, this case represents the first time in 9 known cases now where a law enforcement officer has been charged criminally and prosecuted criminally because that officer mistakenly drew and fired a firearm instead of a taser. And what Johannes is concerned about is that if this conviction stands, it may send a signal to other district attorneys in this county or in this state that it's okay to prosecute a police officer for making this kind of mistake. And Johannes says, I'd hate to see another police officer go through what I've gone through. And he wants to stay in this to invalidate the conviction, go back to trial, because he says no police officer should be convicted
So
for this
how
conduct.
dedicated is he to that fight?
I can tell you from my discussion today, he is very dedicated to that fight.
And what's going on with the civil lawsuit? Are you involved in that?
I am involved in the civil lawsuit. The civil lawsuit has settled as to the 4-year-old daughter, Tatiana. This lawsuit is unresolved as of now concerning Wanda Johnson, Oscar Grant's mother. We engaged in settlement discussions earlier this week in federal district court in San Francisco, and they were unsuccessful. So we have a trial date set in that case in May. It still may settle. It may go to trial.
What's the settlement with the daughter?
What is
Yeah.
the settlement? It was just over $1 million. I think it was announced.
So time
Who will,
frame,
that Bart will pay, or that Mehserle will pay? Or?
Bart pays that. Mehserle was not paying that. So that was Bart.
so moving forward, just as far as like time frame, what's next steps and where we go from here?
Well, I think where we go from here is that we hope that Mr. Mehserle and his family get reunited early next year, and that he can live safely with his family, and then we will be pursuing this appeal, and hopefully we will be hearing before the end of next year that the conviction is reversed, and that we're going to go back to trial on the involuntary manslaughter charge, which would be the only charge that he'll be tried on. Second time.
Do you have any further recourse on bail issue? Are there any
Yes.
appellate courts that you can ask?
Yes, certainly. The ruling today by Judge Perry is reviewable by the Court of Appeal, and I think we will probably ask the Court of Appeal to review Judge Perry's ruling.
Is that
I think
something
his
that will be
ruling is
done
wrong.
quickly?
Oh, yes. The Court of Appeal will do it quickly in this case, particularly because Mr. Mehserle's sentence is only 6 months or so, and so the Court of Appeal is going to want to make a ruling on this pretty quickly.
When will you file?
Probably next week.
So is that 100% you're going to file?
Yeah, I think we're going to ask the Court of Appeal to review the ruling today. I think, again, with great deference and enormous respect to Judge Perry, I think when he said at the new trial motion that he understood where his instructional error could be fatal, and I know he discussed that today, we feel that it is fatal. As I said before, it allowed this jury to convict Mr. Mehserle of manslaughter based on the conduct of another officer that Mehserle had no knowledge of, and on a basis that has never found support in California law. So I think what we know is that if there is an instructional error that results in conviction, it is deemed reversible error as a matter of law. So I think the judge, with enormous respect for him, committed reversible error in the instructions he gave in this case.
You said the civil trial would be May?
And the civil trial is
Right around
currently
the time
set for
when
May.
they get off.
Yeah, that's true.
Thank
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.